All right. Good night, everyone. I'm happy to be here again, and I greet you in the name of Jesus. Uh, we are going to recap Daniel chapter 9 because we just had one or two verses to finish, but those verses were very big. For some reason, Daniel chapter 9 has become my favorite chapter in the book of Daniel for the time being. I think I think the only one that would surpass Daniel chapter 9 will be chapter 10 and chapter 12, because after 9 we will go into 10, and then 10 we go into 12, because 12 is the end of the book, and 10 and 12 goes together. So what we are doing is recapping Daniel chapter 9. Some things you would probably have heard already. Um, I will try to avoid the temptation of going too deep, because we did the prayer of Daniel from the verse 3 to 21 twice already. And my favorite verse is Daniel chapter 9, verse 2. And this is the one on the screen right now. In the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, understood by books the number of years whereof the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah the prophet, that he would accomplish 70 years in the desolation of Jerusalem. This verse is so powerful, it's so huge. You can take a week just to do this verse. In the first year of his reign, we are talking about the reign of Darius. King Darius. Remember, Darius was the guy who captured Babylon, but he was not the king. When Daniel captured Babylon, it was Cyrus who was the king. Cyrus was the king of the Medes and the Persian, and Darius was a general in his army. And Darius uh, captured Babylon in the year 539, and that was in October of 539. So they will not count that as the Darius' first year. So Darius' first year will be 538 BCE. So this chapter was written in 538 BCE. It was written by Daniel, and Daniel said, I understood by books the number of years that the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah the prophet. So here we see two prophets. They consider Daniel a minor prophet, but in our study, I consider Daniel a major prophet because of the things that God revealed to him. And then we have Jeremiah the prophet. Uh, when Daniel was a little boy, Jeremiah had already started preaching and prophesying. Jeremiah started his prophecy in the year 627. And well, Daniel wasn't born yet, but as he was growing up, he probably heard of a thing or two about Jeremiah. We discussed this in our study. Daniel and Jeremiah are two prophets, but they are totally different. They had totally different ministry, in that Daniel ministry took place in the Babylonian palace, while Jeremiah ministry took place in Jerusalem. Daniel was always dressed up properly, and he was a proper gentleman. Jeremiah was put in stocks. Jeremiah was put in prison. Jeremiah was beaten. Jeremiah was cast in a cistern and left to die. So it's a totally different ministry. Jeremiah wrote his book in the year 604, and this is a copy of the book that that Daniel was reading. The first copy was torn up and cast into in the fire by Jehoiakim. Um, so this was maybe from the second or third copy of that book. However, Daniel discovered that 70 years or Jerusalem was going to be desolate for 70 years. The word desolate means a state of complete emptiness or destruction. So Jerusalem was going to be in complete emptiness and destruction for a period of 70 years. So this is the first 70 years that we are seeing in Daniel chapter 9. We are going to see the number 70 at least three different times in this chapter. So the first 70 years started in the year 605. What happened in the year 605? It was the third year that Jehoiakim was the king of Judah, and it was also the year that Nebuchadnezzar passed by Jerusalem, and he captured Jehoiakim and some of the young kids of royal lineage. And Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego was in that group that was captured. That was in the year 605. Then again in 597, Nebuchadnezzar passed by again, and he took over 10,000 people. And during this time, he took Ezekiel the prophet, and he took them back to Babylon as prisoners. And then we have the year 586 BCE. This is when he came back for the third time. Zedekiah was the king. Nebuchadnezzar totally and completely destroyed Jerusalem. He destroyed the temple. He took all the gold and silver out of the temple, all the expensive stuff from the king's house and the rich people's house, and he took everybody to Babylon, everybody that survived to Babylon. And then we have the year 538. This is when this book was written, in the year 538 BCE. And this is when this chapter was written in 538. Now, what Daniel had to be reading was the instructions of how to live in Babylon. Jeremiah, in the book of Jeremiah, he wrote how you should live in Babylon. He told them, do not fight Nebuchadnezzar, because Nebuchadnezzar is a servant of God, and he is the instrument God is using to punish the Jews. So when you get to Babylon, and he believed you should go to Babylon, you should not fight. He said, if you fight King Nebuchadnezzar, you will die. But if you go to Babylon as an exile, you would live. When you get to Babylon, you will build your houses, you will plant your vineyards, you will eat the fruit thereof, you will have children, you should marry your children as they get older, you will have grandchildren, but you will prosper. And one of the things he told them to do was pray for the peace of Babylon. And we see for 70 years there were peace in Babylon. However, the Jews, they multiplied uh, uh, over and over again while they were in Babylon, and they prospered. Now, the next question will be, why 70 years? When we were dealing with Daniel chapter 1, we said it was one of the reasons why they went into captivity was because of Manasseh's sin. That was one. Manasseh was the son of Hezekiah, and he led Israel into idolatry. And he repented later in his life, but he could not have pulled Israel out of idolatry. So God punished them for that. And the second reason was for they disobeyed, or the disobedience of God's law. And we dealt with that in detail when we talk about the Shemitah year. God told the children of Israel, he said, when you get to the promised land, the seventh year of a 7-year period, you will let the land rest. You will not plant, you will not sow, you will not harvest. You will let the land rest. and he gave them rules for the Shemitah year. He promised them a miracle that in the sixth year they will have enough harvest to last them 3 years until their fields start harvesting again or producing again. They disobeyed God. For 490 years, they did not observe the Shemitah year or the Sabbatical year, so God had to punish them for that 70 years. God told them, again, this will be found in the book of Jeremiah, that that when God make Jerusalem desolate and God remove all the people from Jerusalem, that the land will get her rest, that the land will observe her Sabbath. So this was the whole reason why um, God removed all of the Jews from Jerusalem, so the land will observe her Sabbath. Now this started in 605. At 638, it was 67 years that passed by. And this is why Daniel realized that he was here for 67 years. Daniel will be around 80 years old at this time. And he started doing some research and stuff like that as to um, the exile that they were in. And he read from the book of Jeremiah that 70 years is almost up, and it is almost time for them to get back home. So this is why Daniel was reading um, the book of Jeremiah. So in verse 3, that was Daniel chapter 9, verse 2. In verse 3 is when Daniel started to pray. We dealt with this for 2 weeks. I will not be getting into too much detail into this one. As we go along, we have a lot to cover. In verse 3, it said, "And I set my face unto the Lord to seek by prayer and supplication with fasting and sackcloth and ashes." And the fact that he said, "I set my face," it tells us about, like in Daniel chapter 6, Daniel said, "I set my face towards Jerusalem." And when he set his face towards Jerusalem, he would go home, he would open his window, face Jerusalem, and he will pray 3 times a day. That is one way of interpreting this. The second way of interpreting this is in Daniel chapter 1, chapter 2, when Daniel purposed in his heart not to defile himself with the portion of the king's meat. So setting his face was he purposed in his heart to see God's face, because it was 67 years out of that 70 years of captivity. He didn't want anything to prevent them from preventing God to fulfill this prophecy. Now he said he set his face to seek God. Seeking God is more than just praying. It was prayer and supplication. But Daniel went all out. He prepared himself in that he had ashes, he had his sackcloth, he was fasting, and then he prayed and supplication. So he went all out seeking God's face for the answer to this prophecy. So Daniel prepared to pray. Daniel used the word of God in chapter 9, verse 4. The opening statement that Daniel made was from the book of Deuteronomy, when he said, talk about fearful and wonderful God, and he who keep the covenant and stuff like that. He used the word of God as the opening statement in his prayer. Daniel confessed his sins and the sins of his people. And Daniel reminded God of his goodness. In this prayer, he reminded God of how he delivered them out of Egypt, how God's name was above every other name. that everybody knew about the God of Israel because of the things that he did for Israel at that time. He reminded God of the relationship that they had. So Daniel's prayer demanded an immediate answer. Not Daniel, but the prayer of Daniel demanded an immediate response from God. So in Daniel chapter 9, verse 21 and to 23, we see the man Gabriel. And Daniel said, and while I was speaking and praying and confessing my sin and the sins of my people, while I was speaking, I was still speaking. I was still praying. Yeah, while I was speaking in prayer, even the man Gabriel, whom I have seen in the vision at the beginning, being caused to fly swiftly, touch me about the time of the evening oblation. So here we are introduced to the second person in Daniel chapter 9, which is Gabriel. And he said, the man Gabriel, but the man Gabriel flew swiftly and touched him. Now we know that a man cannot fly. So this is Gabriel, the angel, and the angel Gabriel came to Daniel while he was yet speaking, while he was yet praying. He did not finish praying as yet. The man Gabriel came, or the angel Gabriel came and touched him. What time was it? The time of the evening oblation. That will be at 3 o'clock in the evening. What did Gabriel say? Oh, Daniel, I am now come forth to give thee skill and understanding. So this is the major reason why the angel Gabriel came, to give him skill and understanding. I am come to show thee, for thou art greatly beloved. Therefore, understand the matter and consider the vision. So Daniel needed help to understand what the vision was all about. What is it God is trying to tell him? And Daniel himself could not understand that. He needed someone to help him. So God sent Gabriel to talk to him. So now we are introduced to the 70 week. So we have the 70 years at the beginning of the chapter. That was from 605 to 538, 539, 37, 536. That is when that 70-year period would finish. Now we are being introduced to 70 weeks. And the angel Gabriel told him, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city. So this was the message that Gabriel was given to Daniel. Now we had touched on these things. That's why I am going this quickly. He says, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon the holy city. So 70 weeks are determined, and let this be a foundation for what that 70 weeks is going to be about. It is about thy people. The 70 weeks is about the Jewish people, and it is about Jerusalem. The 70 weeks are about the Jewish people and about the holy city, Jerusalem. Now, we said the word that was used for weeks was heptad. In the Jewish language, the word heptad means a group of seven. A group of seven. It's like if I were to tell you there were a dozen apples on the table, you know I mean 12. If I said there were a dozen cars in the parking lot, you know I mean 12. So when in Daniel chapter 7, they use the word week, and they for the word week, they use the word heptad. They are talking about a group of seven. And in this case, they are talking about a group of 7 years. So 70 multiplied by 7 years, are determined or are cut out for thy people and for thy holy city. So let this sink in your head. Let this be the foundation to Daniel chapter 9 and the 70 weeks. It is not for the world. It is not for the church. It is for the Jewish people, and it is for the city of Jerusalem. So we are talking about the 70 weeks. Daniel is now telling us that there is going to be a 70-week period for the Jewish people. That 70 weeks is 70 weeks of 7 years, or 490 years. 490 years. Now, what not Daniel, but what Gabriel did, he divided up into three parts. He said part one will be 7 weeks, part two will be 62 weeks, and then we have a 1 week period. So 7 weeks will be 7 weeks of 7 years, that will be 49 years. The second part will be 62 weeks of 7 years, will be 434 years. And then the last week will be 7 years. So the angel Gabriel said, Daniel, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people. The 70 weeks turn out to be 490 years. And then he said, okay, we are going to divide it up into a 7-week or 49 years. We are going to make another period of 62 weeks or 434 years. And then we have one last week of 7 years. So the first two parts together will be 49 years plus 434 years will be 483 years. So from the beginning of the 70 weeks to the end of the 62 weeks will be 483 years. So this is the division of that time we are talking about. But when will this 70 weeks start? The 70 weeks will start from the going forth of the command to restore and to build Jerusalem. So when do we start counting? Remember the first time I showed you in 605, Daniel started to count the 70 years that they would be in exile. That 70 years, in the year 538, it was 67 years, 3 more years to go, and that 70 years will be over. They will be going back to Jerusalem. So the next question would be, when will the 70 weeks start? It will start from the going forth of the command to restore and to build Jerusalem. What will happen during that time? The streets shall be built again. The walls, even in troublous times. That job will take 49 years. So from the time the command went forth to restore and to build Jerusalem, from the time that the streets were to be rebuilt and the walls were to be rebuilt, and the first thing they rebuilt was the walls, and then the streets, and then the buildings, all of that, the rebuilding of Jerusalem will take 49 years. And that 70 weeks will start when the command is given to restore and to build Jerusalem. However, let me get back to this point. From the time the exile started to go back to Jerusalem, from 538, 537, 536, 535, around 535, they started going back to Jerusalem. From that time to the actual building of the wall took 94 years. 94 years before the command to restore and to build Jerusalem was given. So from 535 to 444 is 94 years before that command was given to restore and to build Jerusalem. So what I did was I fill in that gap for you. Now, in order to fill in that gap, you have to read Ezekiel, uh, uh, you have to read Ezra, Ezekiel, you have to read Haggai, you have to read Jeremiah, and you will see what they did in that 94 years. What I did was I did the research for you so you don't have to do it. The first thing that happened, we have Zerubbabel and Joshua in the year 538, 537, 536. 538 was the first year that the year that Darius became king, and in around 537, 536, Zerubbabel was chosen by Darius to take the first group of exile back to Jerusalem. Now, Zerubbabel is very important because he is mentioned twice in the New Testament. He's mentioned in the genealogy of Jesus in Matthew, and he is also mentioned in the genealogy of Jesus in Luke. He was mentioned twice in the New Testament, and Zerubbabel was the grandson of Jehoiachin. Who was Jehoiachin? Jehoiachin was the brother of Jehoiakim. Remember in 605, Jehoiakim was the king of Judah, and Jehoiachin became king when Jehoiachin Kim killed himself. So when Jehoiachin heard that Nebuchadnezzar was making his return to Jerusalem, he prostrated himself before Nebuchadnezzar, and he and his wife and his mother and some of his advisors, and they were taken into captivity into Babylon. When they went back to Babylon, they were imprisoned in Babylon, but he had children while he was in prison, and Zerubbabel was his grandson. Now it is amazing how fragile the lineage of Jesus was. If Jehoiachin did anything wrong, he could have been killed by Nebuchadnezzar, and Zerubbabel would never be born. But Zerubbabel was the one chosen. He probably never saw Jerusalem. He was born in Babylon. He probably never saw Jerusalem, but he was chosen to lead the first group of people back to Jerusalem. He took 42,000 people, plus priests and stuff like that. So it was about 50,000 people he took back to Jerusalem in 538, 537, 536, around that time. So Zerubbabel went back to Jerusalem. Once he reached in Babylon, it took them about 2 years before they started to build the temple, because they had to find a place to live, they had to get a shelter, and they had to fix themselves before they started building the temple. The foundation for the temple was laid 2 years later, approximately 2 years later. So what happened after that? Now, 17 years passed when Zerubbabel reached in Jerusalem, and no work was done in the temple. The only work that was done was in their houses and in their place that they were living, planting their vineyard, building their houses and stuff like that. But they laid the foundation for the temple, but they never completed it. And it was not all Zerubbabel's fault, because what happened was, back in Babylon, now we are talking about two cities here. Some of them were still in Babylon, and some of them were in Jerusalem. And in Babylon, Cyrus the king, he went on campaign. He went on campaigning, and he was fighting his war and stuff like that. And he left his son. Cambyses II in charge of all the daily running of the affairs of the empire. Cambyses did not like the Jews, so he cut off all the money from the Jewish temple. So they had no money to finish the temple. But as time went by, um, Cambyses died in about 6 years, and another Darius, he took over, and he renewed the contract with the Jewish people, and the temple was finished in 3.5 years. So for 17 years they did nothing, but once Darius became king, in 3.5 years they finished the temple. Now, this is what is amazing. The temple was destroyed in 586 BCE, and in 516, exactly 70 years later, the temple was completely rebuilt and dedicated. So this is the second 70 we see in Daniel chapter 9. The first one was the captivity of the Jewish people. The 70 years was fulfilled, and they made their way back home. The second 70 years was when the temple was rebuilt in the year 516. And now we are also dealing with the 70 weeks. Also, that will be the third time we will be seeing the number 70 in Daniel chapter 9. So the temple was finished in 516 BC. Now, 80 years late from the year 538, Ezra was sent to Jerusalem. Ezra was a scribe, and he was a priest, and he was sent to to Jerusalem, because the people needed instructions in temple worship, and they needed instructions in how to live Torah. So the king in Babylon at that time was Artaxerxes, and he sent Ezra in the year 458 BCE, which was 80 years later from the first time Cyrus took over Babylon. Then 13 years later, in the year 445, Nehemiah was sent to Jerusalem to get some work done. Now, we dealt with this last day, and we talked about Nehemiah was in the temple in Shushan, in the palace. Sorry, he was in the palace in Shushan, and he met some brethren that came back from Jerusalem, and he asked them, how is things going in Jerusalem? And when they told him that the walls are broken, the city is in shambles, he had to find a place to sit down, and he wept. And I told you that the fact that he just wept, we have no indication that Nehemiah ever been to Jerusalem, but the fact that he wept without seeing what was taking place in Babylon, in Jerusalem, was that God, through the Spirit, was laying a burden upon his heart for Jerusalem. So he wept, and he started praying. Now, in Daniel's prayer, Daniel did not even finish praying, and he got the answer. The angel Gabriel was sent to him. When Nehemiah started to pray, and Nehemiah used the exact same words as his opening statement in his prayer, the exact verse from Deuteronomy, and he prayed to God. It took him 4 months to get the answer. He started to pray, and 4 months later, he got the answer. That is when the king Artaxerxes told him, what do you want me to do? And Nehemiah said, I would like to go to Jerusalem. I would like to build the walls of Jerusalem. And then the king said, what you want from me? He said, well, if you could help me with this, give me letters so that nobody will stop me on the way. Give me letters so that the forestry department will give me the material I need to build the walls. and build a temple. He got every single thing that he wanted. Oh, one thing I forgot to tell you was when Ezra was going to Jerusalem, Ezra boasted that God is his guide and God is going to protect him. So when it was time for Ezra to leave to go to Jerusalem, he was ashamed to ask the king for guards to protect him on the way. So what he did was he went to the river Ahava and they had a prayer meeting for 3 days and then he left and God protected him all the way. When Nehemiah was going to Jerusalem, the king gave him captains of the army. He gave him soldiers because he had a lot of gold and silver and stuff like that. And he carried another group of people. So it took three set of people to go from Jerusalem to Babylon. And now it took three set of people or three trips to go from Babylon back to Jerusalem. The first group went with Zerubbabel, the second group went with Ezra, and the third group is going back with Nehemiah. So now Nehemiah, 94 years later, Nehemiah went to Jerusalem. And this was the verse that triggered him off. And he said unto them, he see the distress, or what he did here in this verse, he see the distress that we are in. Now Jerusalem laid waste, and the gates thereof are burnt with fire. Come, let us build up the walls of Jerusalem, that we be no more a reproach. I personally accept this as the command to build Jerusalem. In Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 17, Nehemiah said to them, come, let us build the wall of Jerusalem. Some Bible teachers say when Artaxerxes talked to Nehemiah and give him the authority to go back to Jerusalem, they start counting that time. So the difference in time will be about 5 months. So if somebody is counting from the time Nehemiah talked to the king and get permission to go back to Jerusalem, it was 5 months earlier. So this is what happened. When Nehemiah went to Jerusalem, he did not tell them what he was there for. On the third night, he took some men and he sat on his donkey and he walked around the city and surveyed the damages that was done to the walls in Jerusalem. And then the next day, he told them, he said, come, let us build the walls of Jerusalem. So this was the command. This was when the 70 weeks started. So from the going forth of the command to restore and to build Jerusalem, the streets shall be built again, and the walls, even in troublous times. And this will take 49 years. But let us look at this statement here, even in troublous times. Let us take a look at that. Even in troublous times. What happened while they were building the wall? Nehemiah said, they laughed at us to scorn and despised us. That was one. That's the beginning of the problems. They told him, if a fox go up, he shall break the wall down. He shall even break down their stone wall. So what the people were saying at that time was, Nehemiah, what are you doing? You build that wall, a fox will go up that wall, the whole wall will fall down. For the builders, everyone had his sword girdled by his side, so he built. So while they were building the wall, they had to carry a sword with them to protect themselves from the enemies. And half of them held the spear from the rising of the morning till the stars appear. So they had to protect themselves from the enemy while they were building the wall. Nor the men of the guard which followed me, none of us put off our clothes, saving that everyone put them off for washing. So they will wear their clothes until it stinks on them from the sweat and stuff like that. But they will not even change clothes. They had to stand guard while they work. Some will stand guard, some will work. Some had their sword, some had their spear. They were being insulted while the wall was being built. And then they sent messages to Nehemiah. Come, let us meet in some one of the villages in the plains of Uno. But they thought to do me mischief. When they could not attack him on the wall, they sent messages. Nehemiah, come on, let's meet in the village. Let's talk. And he said, Yet they sent unto me 4 times after this sort, and I answered them after the same manner. I sent a messenger unto them, saying, I am doing a great work, so that I cannot come down. Why should why should the work cease whilst I leave it and come down to you? So they sent 4 times asking him to come, let's have a meeting in one of the villages. But he knew that they wanted to destroy him. He knew that they wanted to kill him. So he told them, I am doing a great work. I cannot come down. But they did not stop there. He said, let us meet in the house of God. So now they are hitting it close. They are hitting it at home. Let us meet together in the house of God, within the temple, and let us shut the door of the temple, for they will come to slay thee. Yea, in the night they will come to slay thee. Now, when you look at this verse, it looks like they have good intentions. They are saying, we can meet in the temple. That's a safe place. We will shut the door of the temple. That's a good thing, because they will come and slay you in the night while we are sleeping. So Nehemiah, we want to protect you, and we want to protect you from the enemies. But who is saying this? It was the enemy that was saying this. And this was a trap so that they will kill Nehemiah and they would stop the work that was being done in Jerusalem. So when you look at this, you will think this might be a good thing. But this is so wrong, and this is so much of a trap. And let me show you why this is a trap. Nehemiah could not have entered into the temple. Why would Nehemiah not be able to enter into the temple? He that is wounded or had his privy member cut off shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. A bastard shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord, even to his 10th generation shall he not enter into the congregation of the Lord. The first verse, he that is wounded or had his privy member cut off. Nehemiah was a Enoch. Nehemiah was not qualified to go into the temple. So God himself might have slain him if he entered into the temple, because he had no authority to enter into the temple. He was not a whole man. Nehemiah was an Enoch because he was serving in the palace in Babylon. He was a wine bearer in Babylon. He was the one serving the king his wine. And that is how he got the authority to come to Jerusalem to build a wall. So that was a trap for Nehemiah in so many different ways. He would have died regardless, and the work would have been stopped. However, the wall was finished in the 25th day of the month of Elul in the 52 days. It took them 52 days to finish the wall. Now, the wall itself was finished in 52 days. So then they had to do the streets, and they had to clear the rubble from the city of Jerusalem. All that will take 49 years. Now, when that is finished, and after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off. 62 weeks, Messiah will be cut off. So after Nehemiah finishes work, And if I have the time, I will come back to this and let you know some other problems that they had. When the wall was finished, the city was finished, uh, you start counting again. 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off. Remember, the 62 weeks is 434 years. Messiah will be cut off. So Daniel saw in his vision from the year 538 or 605 till the time that Messiah will be cut off. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. So let's look at this for a second. The city was just rebuilt. In 52 days, the wall was finished. In 49 years, the city was rebuilt. The temple was rebuilt in 20 years, well, 3.5 years plus 17. So Jerusalem was up and running again. Now Daniel is saying that the people of the prince shall come and shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. What is going on here? The city was just built. And Gabriel is telling Daniel, in 434 years, the city and the sanctuary will be destroyed, and the end thereof shall be a flood, and unto the end of the war desolation are determined. That is set, that this is what is going to happen. So let's go on. So we have 7 weeks of 7 years, 49 years. That's when the Jerusalem was rebuilt. And now we have 62 weeks. That's 62 weeks of 7 years. That's 434 years. So that is equal to 69 weeks of 7 years, 483 years, and Messiah shall be cut off. So now we reach the prophecy where we know that Messiah is going to show up, Messiah is going to be on earth, and Messiah will be cut off. But did anyone in history pay attention to Daniel's 70 weeks? Do we know of anybody who studied this in those days? Now you remember, Daniel was the chief. Daniel was the chief magician. Okay, Daniel was in Persia. Well, he was in Babylon, and he was also in Persia. But did anyone in history pay attention to Daniel's 70 weeks? Look at this. This is Matthew chapter 2, verse 1 and 2. And when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judah, in the day of Herod the king, behold, there came 3 wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, and we come to worship him. These 3 wise men, they are called Magi or Magi. Where did the Magi came from? The Magi came from Persia. Magi are wise men. They studied the book of Daniel, and they knew that Messiah was going to be born around this time. They knew that. And they came. So the 3 wise men, they studied the book of Daniel, and they understood the 70 weeks. Now, Magi is a religion in Persia, and that is where they came from. So yes, people in history studied Daniel's 70 weeks, and they knew that Messiah was about to come. Now look at this one. And behold, there was a man in Jerusalem whose name was Simeon. The same man was just and devout, waiting for the consolation of Israel, and the Holy Ghost was upon him. So Simeon also knew that Messiah was about to be born. He also studied Daniel. And then look at this one. And there was one, Anna, the prophetess, the daughter of that big word, of the tribe of Asher, and she was of a great age. She also was looking for Messiah. They knew that Messiah was going to be born around that time, so they were looking for Messiah. They were waiting for Messiah. Simeon said, now I could die because I have seen the Lamb of God. Now look at this one. Philip findeth Nathanael and said unto him, we have found him. Why would they find him? Because they were looking for him. We have found him of whom Moses in the law and the prophets, and Daniel, did write. Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. That's verse 45, John chapter 1. And Nathanael said unto him, can any good thing come out of Nazareth? Philip said unto him, come and see. So there were people who studied Daniel 70 weeks, and they understood that Messiah was going to be born around that time. So this is what we got. 7 weeks or 49 years, the wall was built. And then we have 62 weeks later, or 434 years, Messiah was cut off, but not by himself. That will give us 483 years, or 69 weeks. Now, what happened after Messiah died on the cross? The church was born. And this is where you are, and this is where I am, and this is today. This is the church period that we are living in today. I have 2,000 years, but it's a lot more than 2,000 years. It's 2025 right now. And what are we waiting on? We are waiting on the rapture to take place, for the church to disappear, and then we have the 1 week remaining. This is the 1 week that is missing. This is the 1 week that we do not find in the book of Daniel. This did not happen yet. This is what is going to happen. But we are living in the church age. This is where we are. We are waiting for that 1 week. We should not be here when that 1 week takes place. And then when you put all together, you will get 70 weeks or 490 years. This is the 70 weeks of Daniel. So let's see what's taking place after that. So in 516, the Jews are now in Jerusalem. The temple was rebuilt by Zerubbabel. 444, Jerusalem was restored, the wall, the streets, the building, the temple. In 33 AD, 483 years later, Messiah was cut off. This is what happens up until today. And the people of the prince shall come and shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Now, on one hand, we just see the temple being rebuilt. We see the temple in Jerusalem, Jerusalem being rebuilt, and now the people of the prince. And pay attention to this. The people of the prince shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. So this is what happened. Matthew 24, verse 1 and 2. And Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him for to show him the building of the temple. And Jesus said unto them, see ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left there one stone upon the other that shall not be thrown down. So the temple was rebuilt. Jerusalem was rebuilt. Now Jesus is saying, no, that is not going to stand. That is going to fall. Not one stone will be left upon the other. And this verse I just showed you, the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. So this is what happened. Jesus died in 33 AD. In 66 AD, Titus came and he laid siege on Jerusalem. Between 66 AD and 73 AD, Titus laid siege. In 66 AD, the siege began. In 70 AD, Jerusalem fell and the temple was destroyed. This was the temple that was renovated by Herod. 1 million Jews were killed. 95,000 was taken into captivity. The temple and Jerusalem was destroyed. So today, while I am speaking to you, Jerusalem is not built up again as it's supposed to. The temple, especially the temple, this is what we are looking for. The temple have to be rebuilt. This is where we are today. And the people of the prince shall come and shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. When Titus came, Titus did not want to destroy the city. Titus did not want to destroy the temple. But the people who was with him, they were the ones who destroyed the temple. And the reason why they destroyed the temple was overlaid with gold. And they had to turn over, Jesus said, not one stone will be on another, because they turn over every single stone so that they can get the gold that was between the stones. Because they lit the temple on fire and the gold melted, went between the stones. They turn over every single stone so that they can get the gold. So the words of Jesus Christ was fulfilled to the very T. This is Daniel chapter 9, verse 26. Now, the last week is what is missing. Now look at this. And he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. He shall confirm a covenant. He shall make an agreement with them for 1 week. And in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. So there's 3 things we are going to learn here. He shall make a covenant for that one missing week. We have 483 years. We have 69 weeks. Daniel was told 70 weeks are determined upon your people and upon the holy city. So this is the last week remaining, and he shall make a covenant for 1 week. The second thing we would learn is in the midst of the week, he shall break that covenant, and he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. In the middle of the week, he will break the covenant and he shall cause it to cease. How will this happen? This will happen because the temple have to be rebuilt. The temple have to rebuild. Now look at this. We are going to close in a minute, so just bear with me. And he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. And look at Daniel chapter 7, verse 8. And I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn. The he that we are talking about is the little horn in Daniel chapter 7. Who we are talking about is the Antichrist, who is going to make an agreement with many for 1 week. So in the midst of the week, in the middle of the week, he shall cause a sacrifice and oblation to cease. I beheld the same horn made war with the saints and prevail against them. And they shall be given into his hand until a times, and dividing of time. So he will make a covenant with them. He will break the covenant in the middle of the week. And times, and dividing of time is 3.5 years. Or half of the week, which will be 3.5 years. Now look at this. When he therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, whosoever readeth, let him understand, and let them which be in Judah flee into the mountain. This is Jesus talking, and Jesus is talking about the book of Daniel, and Jesus is talking about the desolation that Daniel talked about in Daniel chapter 9. So Jesus is confirming what Daniel said. And in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. Now look at Daniel chapter 8, verse 11. And by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. So what are we looking for today? We are looking for the rebuilding of the third temple. We are looking for the reinstating of the daily sacrifice. And we are waiting for the rapture, not the second coming. We are waiting for the rapture. And this is where we are today as we speak. And this brings us to the end of our class. I hope you had fun as much as I did. God bless you. And I'll turn back over to Pastor Michael.